It's so funny in quarantine. I feel like a lot of people revisited or discovered the show for the first time.
Big time.
I found that like I'm getting recognized more with a mask and sunglasses on than ever before with no mask or sunglasses on.
Welcome to episode 2 of Entertainment Weekly's Binge of the Vampire Diaries. I'm Sam Heifel, and I'm joined by executive producer Julie Plec and series stars Nina Dobrev and Paul Wesley to talk all things season 2, one of my favorite top 2 seasons, one of my favorite seasons for sure. As I said with the first episode, we will stick mostly to season 2, but there is a series-wide spoiler alert on every episode of this podcast. If we decide to spoil the ending, it's going to happen. So I say watch the whole show before you come back and listen to any of these episodes. But as we're getting into it, Nina, you were sort of just saying off camera, like, do you all remember specific seasons of the Vampire Diaries? How does that work in your mind?
It kind of feels like one long episode that lasted 8 years. As we were prepping for this interview, I actually had to Google YouTube videos of recaps of season 2 to refresh my memory, to make sure that, like, because I thought we were only sticking to season 2. So I was like, hey, to make sure I don't say anything from season 3 or from season 1. So Paul, if you don't remember, here's a general recap.
Spoiler alert. I don't remember.
By the way, this is like the perfect example of like their 2 actor processes. Like Nina would have a binder full of notes and maps and charts for everything she's supposed to do. And Paul would be in the hair and makeup room at call being like, what are we shooting today?
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm still a consummate professional, but yeah, I'm a little bit more. No, but it's funny because I do need that recap, Nina. But for me, from speaking of like actors' processes, like from like a narcissistic actor perspective, when you say like, do you remember season 2? For me, I look at it like, there's BC and AD, before Christ and after death. For me, it's before Ripper, it's BR and AR after Ripper. So all I know is that like season 2, I was still a good guy. Yeah. And then towards the end, I started getting, so that for me, that's the only like gauge I have of time.
A good guy and henceforth
miserable.
Yeah,
exactly.
Henceforth unhappy.
Exactly. So Nina, what does happen in season 2? What's the
Catherine returns, and at the end of season 1, Catherine kills Anders' character, which was
Uncle John.
Uncle John, and Daddy. And so Catherine returns and wreaks havoc, and then Tyler Lockwood's cousin or brother, what was he? Brother, cousin,
Mason Lockwood. Yeah,
Mason. Taylor,
great looking guy.
Taylor Kinney arrives, and he's looking for the Moonstone, because he wants to activate some sort of werewolf something or another. And then the originals are introduced, and Klaus is a hybrid vampire werewolf who then he wants to break some sort of a curse and either become full werewolf or full, I don't remember this part.
Full hybrid.
Full
Sun and Moon curse.
Okay, yes. It's all very blurry. I remember like at the time we were shooting it being confused and being like trying to stay on track.
It sounds for me like I remember when the season that the originals got introduced was one of my favorite seasons. I do remember that. So this must be it.
Yes, that's it. Your favorite season.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to start with, because season 2 kicks off with Catherine in modern day. Obviously, at that point, Nina, you played her in flashbacks, but this was like the big Catherine's in it now moment. And Julie and Kevin talked about in episode 1, like they, at the very beginning, weren't fully sure if you were going to play both characters. So like, what was kind of your introduction to, oh no, like I'm doing double duty on the show and I have to craft this entire other character?
They didn't tell me until like day of almost. I feel like for the same reason they weren't sure, so they definitely weren't going to tell me. But I feel like right before that episode, was it episode 6 of season 1, Julie? The Lost Boys, Lost Girls?
Yeah.
She was introduced, so then they gave me a heads up, and then, but it was gradual. Like the first episode was just like a couple flashbacks, and then they introduced her more and more. So I got to figure her out over the first season, and then by season 2, once she was like back in the flesh and she was in a lot more of the episodes, it was crazy schedule wise, shooting both of the roles, having to do Elena and Catherine, and shooting scenes with myself at times was a wild learning experience, but really fun too, because I got to play 2 wildly different characters and play around and do and say things that I would, especially at the time, never dare think and say out loud, because I was like a self-proclaimed good girl when I got this show, and then slowly became more evil as I embodied Catherine. I learned a lot from her. She and like kind of grew up and got more confident with the writing. It was pretty interesting.
Julie, what was it like for you all to, I mean, Catherine is one of the greatest villains, if not the greatest villain of the Vampire Diaries. What was it like? You'd written her in flashback, but to kind of write and introduce this character, what did you guys feel like she kind of added to the modern day mix of it all?
Well, it really was, in a lot of ways, she was like the Lady Damon, you know? She always had the snark, the witty comeback, the one-liner, you know? That's what we were talking about in the first episode. That's sounds like the beginning of a love story, not the end of one. You know, hate is love turned inside out, and all those great things. So it writing her was always so fun because she was so unfettered and wild and could say whatever she wanted and be that big and bold. But I just remember, I mean, just the logistics of that season, because, you know, when you shoot a scene with Nina playing Elena and Catherine, you're shooting the scene with Nina playing Elena and a stand-in, and standing in place and acting against Nina. And then you have to shoot the whole scene all over again with Nina in the other role. And so everything you're shooting twice. And we didn't really think of that when we started writing the show. It didn't totally occur to us that it would basically double the shooting time of every scene. And so it got to the point where Nina was just like, had been working so hard and was so beaten down that we, moving forward, had to just write less Catherine Elena, because it was just too much. It was like, you know, all day, every day.
I remember carrying around 2 separate scripts, one for each character, because I had to like break down what Elena was going through in that episode and what her intentions were, and then having a separate script for what Catherine wanted out of every scene and every circumstance. And then even the physicalities, like I had to kind of draw out and map out like what I would do as each character so that I could react as the other person. Like if Elena rolled her eyes, I'd have to make sure Catherine clocked it. Or if Catherine said something bitchy, then Elena would have to also react to that. So I remember it like being very meticulous about those specific things. It was really challenging, but really fun. And like Julie mentioned, exhausting at times to have to
was it Klaus?
Sustain that energy.
Klaus was the episode where she basically is talking to Catherine inside the tomb. And so Catherine's like all dried out on one side, and then
I think that's Katerina, isn't it?
Katerina, thank you. Yeah. Katerina. Yeah, that's right. Klaus was 19. There's like probably 20 pages of dialogue of the 2 of them just talking.
Steph, I know you're here. I brought you some things. You came to bribe me. What is it that you want? I want you to tell me about Klaus. You've been busy.
She started as a stand-in and was just reading lines, but she was so good that
Brittany.
Brittany. She was really good and like gave you what you needed. So you're actually acting against somebody as opposed to just like a random person.
Yeah, she was really good to work with, especially because I would give her the other scripts that I had, and I would do it once the way I kind of wanted to do it. And then she was really good at mimicking and redoing it so that it was still, because then later, if she had because you'd still see the back of her head and her body language. So if she did something, then I would have to match to what she did if it wasn't what we planned together. So there was a lot of planning involved. And as stupid as it is, just the hair and makeup time too, to switch over from each character. I don't remember. What did you guys do in the hour that it took to switch over? Like, did you film something else to save the time?
Yeah, we would always schedule it. So it was either like happening over, like breaking you for an early lunch, or, you know, a small scene that we could fit in the middle. Cause I think it was a full hour to like, or maybe even an hour and 45 to like take you all down and then build you back up.
It's so funny, like hearing all this, like I don't know. It's all in the back of my brain, like in my subconscious. And now hearing all of this, like the switch over time, Brittany reading off camera, this, and then you with the binders, like I have vivid memories of all of this that I haven't actually thought about in 10 years. You know, I'm going down this like visceral memory lane, like imagining everything. It's so wild. I'm just going to continue listening.
Well, I told Julie before we started, we have to touch on Masquerade because it's one of the best episodes of the series. But for you two, it was also, that was the like Catherine, Damon, Stefan fight scene, which like, I feel like you probably remember shooting.
That was, by the way, that particular scene. I don't remember. Everybody was so mad at each other. I don't remember why, but also it was a Friday night and we were on stage. Well, the one where you're like throwing stakes at each other in the hotel room was a stage piece.
Oh, you're right.
And
I wasn't in that, was I?
Yeah, you were in that too. It was the two brothers against Catherine. It was like it was like the Lockwood Mansion, Lockwood Mansion, like tea room, but we built it.
Oh, okay. I don't know why I don't remember this scene.
But the way production's supposed to work is that you start early on a Monday at like 7:00 in the morning. And then by the time you get to Friday, you know, you might have a night shoot outside. So you want to be like a later call. And sometimes you have really late calls. The worst thing you can do for anybody is what we did. I don't even know why it happened that way, but we were on the stage on a Friday, but like with a 5:00 call. So you're not even outside. There's no, PM. There's no reason to be like shooting 5 p.m. to 7 a.m. except for just the schedule happened to fall that way. Oh. And that scene took so long. And I think we wrapped at like 8:00 in the morning. Like, I think we watched the sun come up and it was terrible. And everyone was in a bad mood and everyone was all pissed off at each other.
We didn't watch the sun come up. We left work and drove home when the sun was coming up.
Right. And then tried
because it was dark inside
to fall asleep at 9 a.m. Yeah. It's so, I really believe like firmly in my heart that shows would be so much better in terms of just like longevity, actor happiness, quality, everything. Not that Vampire Diaries season 1 and 2 were amazing quality, but I do think we got burnt out. I think everyone should shoot like 3 weeks on and then 1 week off. I think it would be the solution to everything.
I agree.
Especially on 22 a year, you know, I just, Anyway, it has nothing to do with this podcast. It's just, it's just a lot of episodes. 22 episodes is a lot to shoot, a lot to write, a lot. It's just crazy.
Yeah, I remember that day too, Julie. That was kind of one of my breaking points of exhaustion was that specific episode. There was so much Catherine and all those night shoots. And I think I was like 22 years old at the time.
Yeah, you were very young.
And still then was like so exhausted to the core of my being. I don't think I could do that now at 32. Right. Wow, 32. Right. So old.
Years. So old. But just circling back on the final thing on Catherine, that really like is when she clicked for me. I mean, she was epic from the jump, but like, I think it was episode 4. It was Rob Hardy's episode. And it was the first time we flashed back again in season 2. And I don't even remember what her story was in that episode that directly, but I remember the end of the episode when Catherine, there's a Sarah Bareilles song playing, and Catherine is like out on a dirt road and she's just like staring up and longingly for something, and you realize like this is a character that wants something, that needs something emotionally. Like she is being driven by a deeply personal want here. And that sort of became the rule on the show, that if you have a villain, the villain has to be, and we've talked about this a lot, the villain has to be the hero of their own story. And not just in like that, I like to be a bad person chasing power, but in like, I have lost a love that I must avenge, or I am doing this for my child, or whatever, like something that is just a deeply personal rooting interest for them. And so that's the moment where I fell in love with Catherine as a hero of her own story. Just, I had so much empathy for her in that moment. And that has a lot to do with, we called him out in the last episode, but Josh Butler, the editor, just knew how to find the song and just get that moment. And that was one of my favorite music moments on the show.
Well, I'm just going to keep calling out scenes and see what it brings up. But season 2, and it is because of Catherine, has what I consider maybe one of the most heartbreaking breakup scenes in the history of the Vampire Diaries, when Jenna stabs herself and Stefan and Elena break up. And Paul, you like destroyed me. I'm scared to ask about this.
You're a meme. That's a meme. Your cry face.
You are a meme.
I know it's not as bad as James Van Der Beek's.
Oh, no.
I love that scene.
The person who was directing that was Baring. John Baring. And I just remember, he's a director who likes to do lots of takes, like lots, like sometimes like 10, 12, 14, which is very unheard of in television, frankly. Network television, there's a schedule and you don't really do that many takes. I don't know if we did that many, but I remember doing like at least 4 that were like pretty good, but I also was dealing with a couple things in my personal life. So I was kind of like, didn't really want to go to dark places because I was like trying to keep my head above water in real life, frankly. And so Baring kept pushing me. I certainly didn't confide in him, but maybe he sensed I was going through something. And so he really wanted that on screen. And I remember just getting a little bit angry at him, even though it was his job. And sure. That I would do the same as a director. And that's what you're supposed to do. It's when you're creating a film or television, the whole point of it is to be honest and pure. Otherwise, what the hell is the point? I was still a young actor and I kind of was still like sort of guarding my feelings. And I just remember being like, all right, F it. I'm not going to curse. I feel like this is PG. F it. I'll do it. I'll just go. I'll go to my personal place. So that crying and all that that whole breakup was, my own dealing with my own stuff essentially on screen, exploited, which is what acting is. And then, I remember after we shot it, I was like a little relieved, but then also a little bit angry that I had to deal with that and then I had to go home and deal with that. But at the end of the day, it's on screen. It works so great for the role, for the scene. And I would do it again in a heartbeat because, that's what all the great actors do. So, hey, Greggy, no, that's my dog. He doesn't want me to go to the dark place. He's worried about me.
Oh, that's such a good thing. I feel like, wait, Paul, now that we have you, because this was a question I had for Julie and Kevin in season 1 of, this was my favorite answer to this, because at the end of the pilot, when Stefan comes to like Elena's front door to check on her, and then she invites him in, like it's at the very end of the pilot, you're like on the verge of tears. So of course I'm talking to Julie and Kevin and I'm like, it was such an amazing choice from Paul. And they're like, we're pretty sure it was so cold, his eyes were watering. So do you remember?
It's like vague memory of you being like, I can't get my eyes to stop watering. I don't know if I made it up.
Yeah. So to answer your question, I don't know if that was tears or me. I don't know.
I will continue thinking it was a fantastic Paul acting.
I'd prefer you think that.
Okay, good. That's settled. Okay, well, let's talk about the entrance of the originals, which obviously starts with Elijah, which, Julie, you all have talked about this a lot, but so he was supposed to die at the end of that episode, right?
Yeah, I think originally when we wrote it, we were, the plan was to kill him. And then we thought, well, actually we could use this villain as a bridge villain until we introduced Klaus. And so we just started keeping him in the story so that we were just kind of filling time because we didn't want to have the Klaus reveal until the end of the season. He was scripted to really, truly just be like a mid-season little mini arc villain. And then he was Daniel and everything changed.
That happened a lot, didn't it? Where like people would come in for a quick little whatever, and then you guys would fall in love with them and write a whole spin-off series for them.
Yeah, it did. I mean, he's certainly the one that like made the most impact. I think he was so precise and had made such a choice about who this character was going to be, and it was just so delightful.
To whom it may concern, you're making a great mistake if you think that you can beat me. You can't.
I remember the day he had that big thing in his
Yeah.
I have a photo of him with that because I've known Daniel for years, and I knew Daniel from Vancouver from like a decade prior. I was doing a TV series called Wolf Lake for CBS, and I remember like meeting Daniel through friends, and we stayed in touch. So then, sure enough, he showed up 10 years later. And I just remember he has a presence for sure. Like I definitely remember him walking in with the suit and like, oh, this is cool. This is going to be like an interesting character. And then boom, then he got his own spinoff.
But Paul can take partial credit for Joseph Morgan. You can tell that.
Yeah. I get intuitions about people, like I can just sort of sense. And I remember Joseph Morgan, I met him just socially. He was dating a very good friend of mine. And I met him and I just had a conversation with him. I didn't even ask him about acting. Like, it was just like a conversation. And then I remember thinking, oh, he's an interesting guy. There's something about him that's kind of, I don't know why, but I think this guy's talented. I don't know why. I just had that kind of intuition. And we were all having dinner and Julie was telling me we need to cast this villain essentially, and we're having a hard time. And I just remember being like, you know what? Check out this guy. I had a conversation with him and I think he might be an interesting choice. And you said, okay, cool. I'll send an email to casting. I didn't think anything was going to come of it. But you actually did send the email to casting and you guys met with him. And did he read for it?
Yeah, he read. Yeah, he put himself on tape.
Okay, that's what he put himself on tape.
Yeah.
Okay, and then he got the part. So obviously he got himself the part, but I don't know if he would have necessarily auditioned for it if it weren't for me.
Yeah, I don't know. We'd actually, funnily enough, have to ask Wesley and Greg how that went down. But I remember that conversation so vividly.
No, me too.
And then you being later, and when you heard Joe got cast, you're like, oh my God, that was my idea. I'm like, yeah, it was your idea. And it worked out. I mean, in an extraordinary way.
Yeah.
I feel like that happened a lot with Paul, like suggesting people and them getting on the show. And I remember being so deeply offended because I was like, oh, I want to suggest some people. And then I would like suggest people, but no one would ever get cast. So
you know who else?
Either you guys didn't care about my opinion or my friends weren't talented. I'm not sure which one it is. I finally got my moment though. It took me 8 years, but one day, remember I suggested the song? I sent you a song, Julie.
Yes. This is the best. We were driving home. Yeah.
Yeah, in the finale of Vampire Diaries, the final episode, there was this song. I don't know why. I just connected to it and I sent it to Julie and I was like, I don't know, I like this. I don't know if it'll fit or whatever, but just putting it on your radar. It hadn't even come out yet. It was like a friend's demo, chords demo. It's called Hold On. And I don't even think I think you sort of, I don't know if you listened to it, but you just forwarded the email to the sound guy. Right? Or the music composer?
Basically, I heard the song because you were trying to play it in the car. And I feel like I was trying to play it and it kept resetting. It's because it was a Dropbox file. It wasn't a music file. So on the iPhone, if you're playing a Dropbox music file and if your phone goes to sleep, it starts the whole song all over again. So I couldn't get through the song, but I loved it. So yeah, just in that moment, just so I wouldn't forget, I sent it to our editor and our producer, Tony Solomons. And then I get home, this is weeks later, and going to watch my director's cut of the episode for the first time. And I get to that scene, that song, it's Court Overstreet. It's so beautiful. And I'm just sobbing. And I say to the editor, I said, where'd you find that song? That moment is so perfect. And he's like, you sent it to me. And I said, oh, well, good. I will take full credit, but it's really Nina's credit. Well, it's Court's credit, but.
Yeah. Court's the one that put all the work in. But I remember feeling like very proud that something made the episode at some point, even though it was stupid and small and whatever. But yeah.
Seminal.
Yeah. Well, let's get to the end of season 2. I guess it's the penultimate episode technically, but like the whole season, you're building to this enormous ceremony, ritual, whatever you want to call it. Klaus wants to break the curse. You guys are filming this. There's fire everywhere. It's this big epic thing. What do you all remember about filming that moment?
Oh, you weren't there. Oh yeah, you were. You showed up at the end. You showed up to try to save the day.
Yeah. Jenna dies.
The circle?
Oh my God.
The fire circles.
Wait a minute. Was this directed by Summers?
Summers. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. And this was another night shoot. And I just remember being exhausted. You know, I don't mean to make this all about exhaustion, but the show was very important to me and to Nina and to Ian because it was such a success and we all loved it and believed in it. So it's not one of these things where you just do everything lightly. You take it very seriously. And I just remember being I was dying. I was just like, I want this season to end because I'm putting so much into this, you know? And I just was tired. I was just tired. I just remember shooting and just being tired. That's all I remember. I know that sounds so boring. Do you remember, Nina? Like that was,
yeah. Especially by the time you get to the end of any season, I think we all felt the same way at the end of every season because after shooting 22-hour-long episodes, like I don't know if people, maybe they do know that it takes between 10 to 13 days to shoot one episode. Mm-hmm. We shoot nights for, I felt like 14 to 16-hour days on average, because if you include the travel time and the hair and makeup time and the actual 12-hour shooting day plus the 1-hour lunch. So you're shooting 16 hours a day or working for 16 hours a day. And then it's 10 months of shooting and then traveling for press on the weekends and doing things like, thank God.
And then you have to learn your lines.
Thank God we did this when we were, and then once you get home, you're right, Paul, we have to like break down the scenes and work on everything. So that's another couple of hours. By the end of 10 months of doing this, you are so tired. And I remember getting sick at the end of every season, like so sick, because your body's just kind of holding on, trying to you're like tricking it into thinking it's fine. And then as soon as you relax, I just crashed every year. But it was so like, Paul's right. We were so excited and wanted to do the absolute very best that we could. So we put every ounce of our energy into it. We didn't want to disappoint the fans, and we wanted to make sure that the episodes were the best television that they could possibly be. And that took a lot of energy and our personal lives suffered as a result of it. But when you're in your early 20s, in my case, like that was like work was my life, you know.
Same.
I loved it.
But that particular night was cold, I'm sure. It was also sad because Sarah was so sad to be leaving the show.
Oh yeah,
and that
I
whole
forgot about
time
that.
Was just incredibly emotional. Like she had really personalized the character being written off, which it was not about her at all. Because Sarah Canning is an extraordinary actress. I mean, she is going to be out working and outliving us all. But it really had hit her hard emotionally because she had made friends and she had, formed a relationship. And so it wasn't like a party. It was like a countdown, a death countdown. That was just a real bummer of a time. But boy, speaking of memes, you're a meme from that episode too, Nina, from the laying the rose at Uncle John's grave. with the birdie song playing. There's a birdie song. I don't know why I remember all the songs, but that one, again, is one of the top 5 music moments of the entire series.
That's Skinny Love.
If not the number one. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Right. I remember that.
And the letter that Uncle John writes you, which Mike Daniels wrote, like in 5 minutes. It's just, that's just a great emotional payoff to the season, that episode. And then we had to figure out what the hell to do in the finale.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I do like talking about the John moment though, because wasn't this, Julie, for a long time, season 2 was when Elena was going to become a vampire, kind of until you all came up with the John twist, right?
You know, I don't remember. I knew that like we had really, and you actually might be able to refresh my memory, because I remember we were trying to hold up on making her a vampire as long as humanly possible. But yeah, did we get ourselves into a bind where we thought we had to deliver on it earlier? Because that sounds like us.
When did I turn into a vampire?
End of season 3.
I remember it was in book 2. So I just remember you talking about how like you had considered, but yeah, it was like when you figured out that John could save her life and she wouldn't have how she would come back.
Yeah. And that was, God, I love, that's so funny. I love the last couple episodes of that season. I love the last day when they go up to the waterfall and she says, I want to be a vampire, Stefan. I mean, you guys were doing such beautiful work. And we were like really like doing beautiful film work too. Like just always really wanting the show to look as good as it could, you know, and just be full of scope and all the, you know, cinematic magic. And that again, that's what makes it so hard is you're pushing for excellence on every level. And at 22 episodes, you just want to die at the end. You just want to die. There's just no fun. There's nothing good about it.
Yeah. But then you create something that we're talking about 10 years later. So
yeah, that is the good. Absolutely.
That is the good.
It's so funny in quarantine. I feel like a lot of people revisited or discovered the show for the first time.
Big time.
I found that like I'm getting recognized more with a mask and sunglasses on than ever before with no mask or sunglasses on.
It's from the masquerade.
Right. Because like people have been binging it all over again, and people who didn't have time before because life was too busy have been finding peace or distraction in our show. And so it's breathing a new life, I feel like.
I know, not to be like cheesy about it, but I totally second that. Like there was a moment where in the beginning I was getting recognized a lot. And then it kind of like, it subsided a little. And I was like, okay, cool. And then suddenly like in the last like year, it's like crazy. Everyone has watched the show. And I'm like, what's going on? There must be a resurgence, but it's exactly that. People are discovering the show again. It's crazy. You know, there was an article that came out. It was the 15th most streamed show on Netflix in 2020, which is
really,
crazy. Yeah, which is crazy. And the show premiered 10 years ago, you know what I mean? So that's pretty major.
Longer.
What's that?
12 years ago.
12 years ago. Shit.
God, really?
Yeah, 2009.
Right. Oh my God.
Wow. It's a long time.
You guys, oh my gosh. I just had, you know, like the end of your life when your whole life is supposed to flash in front of your eyes. I'm remembering like Nina in Vancouver on the pilot sneaking off to go snowboarding when she was supposed to.
I remember
and I'm remembering like you guys on season 3 and The Reckoning getting to a huge fight on set because you'd reached your like breaking point of exhaustion, like with each other. And I got calls from both of you. I was in LA and I think one of you was like, you're probably going to hear from the other, but like, I just need to tell you that this is the last straw. And then years later, you're like best friends hanging out all the time, traveling together. Like, it's just such a great arc.
So funny. I remember hanging out when we were doing the pilot in Vancouver. I remember hanging out with Ariel Kebbel, who was shooting a different pilot, all at the Sutton place, and I knew her from my girlfriend at the time. And I just remember like, who would have thought that later she would get on the show and she'd become this fan favorite, you know, playing Stefan's best friend or whatever. It's so funny. Oh my God. The show would have been so different if it aired in it's shot in Vancouver too. Would have been a complete vibe.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, everybody was so.
We would have been so cold.
Atlanta. We would have been so wet.
Yeah.
I mean, we were cold, plenty cold anyway.
I know, but we would have been more consistently cold for longer periods. You know what I mean?
Just like the chill in our bones.
We at least had like 3 or 4 months of cold, and then a whole bunch of sweating, like a lot of fans on set. Not like fans as in viewers, but fans as in to cool us down, because Hotlanta is a real thing in the summer.
Yeah.
When was your 21st birthday? Was that season 2 or season 1?
Season 1.
Okay.
I was 20 when we did the pilot. Yeah. That was wild.
Nina's known for her generosity of adventure, and like, so if she wants to go have one, she will make you come along with her, but she'll like set the whole thing up. So for her 21st birthday, she just got completely hooked up in Vegas and took the entire cast. And then also Kevin and I flew in, and Breslow, I think, flew in from LA. And we had a whole Vegas weekend for Nina's birthday.
That's where Nina, that's where our epic hair photo is, where
that's right, in the suite.
That was in the suite.
That was especially wild because we shot what we mentioned at the beginning of this episode. We shot a Saturday, which is, we had like a 5 p.m. call. We wrapped on Friday and then wrapped at like 7 a.m. on Saturday. And the whole cast like got in a car. We drove to the airport and got on like a 9:30 a.m. flight, flew to Vegas, still having not slept from the shoot, landed, went to I think an indoor skydiving place, did that, went to the room, had dinner, went out, got crazy on Saturday night, celebrated, then got on a plane. I'm pretty sure most of us didn't sleep Saturday night either. Sunday morning, we all got on a plane with either 0 or 2 hours of sleep, landed back in Atlanta that night, and then had to be on set at 5 a.m. on Monday morning.
Oh God.
It was, again, the only things you can do when you're 21. I don't think we would have survived otherwise. I don't know how the writing room was on Monday morning for you and Kevin, Julie.
Yeah, that's rough. It's all rough. And then she took us to the Super Bowl, which I think we've talked about too.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
I feel like I've been to a couple Super Bowls with you, Nina. I don't know. I feel like, probably.
I really liked football for a minute.
Oh, amazing. All right. Well, we have to wrap, but thank you all so much for being here. This was so fun. And for everyone listening, we will be back. Episode 3 will be all about season 3.